Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and you join me for my first St. Louis ribs off the Smoke North offset. Let's get into it. So maybe, as you can tell on the screen, there's a dry, tacky surface on these ribs. That's because they've been dry brining overnight. So let me take you back to yesterday, show you how I like to make my favorite Texas-style overnight dry brine, especially on things like brisket and ribs. And I'll rejoin you right now when it's time to fire up the offset smoker. Okay, we're about ready to get our St. Louis ribs out and get our dry brine rub on. But just before we remove this from the package, I take an opportunity to highlight what I look for when I'm shopping for these ribs. So as you can tell looking at the package here, you want to look for ribs that are both uniform in size, so similar length and width. Sometimes you'll see them packaged and one is tapering right down to almost nothing or getting really thin and the other is really thick. And this isn't going to cook as evenly. You might get some burning on that really thin part and maybe be underdone on the really thick end. So looking for uniformity when it comes to ribs, as well as some great marbling, as you can see up close that these have pretty even fat distribution on both sets. So enough of that, let's get these out of the package, pat them dry, and get our dry brine rub on. Okay, so we've got these patted dry, and as you can tell, they look good, and I don't think they really need any extra trimming. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start on the bottom, and then we'll finish on the presentation side, getting our dry brine rub. You'll notice I'm not going to take the time just to remove the membrane here. I don't do this on my beef ribs. I've tried it on baby backs and on St. Louis ribs like this, and I don't find it makes any difference whatsoever. So rather than just fussing with pulling off that membrane, we're gonna go ahead and just jump straight to our dry brine rub.
Here at the barbecue place, I don't pull off the membrane.
I'm also not gonna put any binder on it since the rub is 50% pepper, 50% salt. Essentially, this is going to help extract some moisture and help the rub adhere to the meat during the dry brine, so we don't need to put anything extra on it like mustard, even though you're more than welcome to if that's something that you're used to and you like. Let's get this on both sides evenly. Okay, our St. Louis ribs look ready for the dry brine. That rub is on nice, so we're gonna leave these in the refrigerator overnight. Now, speaking of the dry brine recipe, I've made a couple tweaks to my approach, a little bit more Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, a little bit less Lowry's. If you've already seen that, just go ahead and navigate to the chapters down below and skip to the next section. But if you haven't seen it, let me take you back to yesterday when I made this rub so you can understand the ratios that I'm using to make the perfect at-home Texas-style salt and pepper dry brine rub. If you haven't seen it before, my favorite Texas-style dry brine rub is mostly a bit of pepper, some salt, with that salt content actually split between two, evenly between Diamond Crystal Kosher salt as well as Lowry's, and then add a little bit of garlic at the end for some good measure. But this, in some cooks, is just on the borderline of being a little bit too much salt, which is what I'm getting from the Lowry. So instead of doing 2 tablespoons of black pepper, a tablespoon of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, and a tablespoon of Lowry's, we're going to break the tablespoons in the salt down into teaspoons. So 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. So what I'm going to do is do 2 teaspoons of Lowry's and 4 teaspoons of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, as that will help just reduce the saltiness a little bit while keeping some of those great flavors. The other thing that has made a huge difference is using something like this fresh cracked black pepper versus the pre-cracked stuff here that I'm using from Costco. The only problem with this is it's really slow, especially when we need something like 4 tablespoons. So I went and I finally got myself one of these. Let me show you the difference it makes. So even though I know the fresh stuff always tastes better than the pre-ground, when you need something like 4 tablespoons, getting enough pepper out of a traditional grinder just takes a long time. Like, I haven't even made a dent here. That's maybe an eighth of what I need. So I got the Man Kitchen pepper cannon after Christmas. Let me show you the difference this makes at getting the volume of pepper we need quickly. So in elapsed time, that was just maybe about 30 seconds, and you can see we've got a full container of fresh cracked black pepper. And I wish there was such thing as smell-o-vision, because if we were just to take a whiff of what sort of peppercorn oils we're getting in the pre-ground stuff, I mean, you can tell it's pepper, and this is maybe great for a soup or adding to your eggs, but in comparison, knock your socks off. That's where you're reminded that pepper is actually a spice. And like I mentioned, I started small and I actually took the time to grind that out a few times, and I was absolutely sold on the difference. But when I saw the pepper cannon can do that about 10 times quicker, I had to try it, and it is totally worth it for rubs like this. So this is definitely going to be something you'll see more of as we go forward, because the flavor impact here is significant. So let's get back to making up the rest of our rub. So since I'm actually cooking a couple other things, I'm going to, as I mentioned, double the rub. So instead of 2 tablespoons, I'm going to go for 4 of our fresh cracked black pepper here. Then we're going to want 2 tablespoons of our diamond crystal kosher salt. And now, since we're adding the ratio, instead of being 50-50, we're going to add a little bit extra of our diamond crystal kosher salt using a teaspoon. So since I'm doubling the recipe, it's going to be 2 teaspoons of diamond crystal kosher salt. Next, we're going to go 4 teaspoons of our Lowry's and 1 tablespoon of garlic. Mix that up well, and our salt and pepper rub is ready to go. So I'll be using naturally seasoned oak for today's smoke, but when I like to get my fire going, I found something that's been working really well is to start with an empty smoker box, add in a little bit of charcoal, and then using some kiln-dried grocery store wood, I like to get my coal bed going. So I break down a couple logs into some small kindling, let that come up to a blaze using my grill blazer grill gun. That's going to overshoot our temperature. So I want to be smoking around 300 degrees. We're about 350 degrees, but that's going to help make sure that my cook chamber is properly heat soaked, as well as giving me a large enough size coal bed that these will ignite no problem. Now, since this has been going for about 10 minutes already, I'll take you nice and close. We're going to add 1 or 2 of these to the little side shelves in my firebox so that they can be preheating, so they'll combust absolutely no time when we get ready to throw these on. Okay, our coal bed is looking great. So in a few minutes, I want to add another split. So I'm just going to start pre-warming it on the semi-insulated portion of our firebox. So it's insulated down here, not up top. This is to help make sure that we can burn an efficient fire, but not so efficient that we get bad smoke. So let those preheat and we'll throw them on in a minute and we'll be ready to start our St. Louis ribs. So having had a chance to do some playing around with my Smoke North Carlisle offset, I've been getting to learn a little bit of its unique characteristics. And so what I found using my meter probe to try and make sense of what's going on in the cook chamber, I get nice even temperatures right out of the firebox and over by the collector. And based off the design, it's shooting that hot air up Texas style right over the top. So I get a nice, really even pocket all the way through my cook chamber. But because of that, it's actually reading a little bit hotter by the collector and a little bit hotter by the firebox. So since I want to be cooking at about 300 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm going to be looking to maintain at least 300 degrees, if not upwards of 325 to 350 degrees on my temperature gauge, since I know I'll be sitting right at 300 in that nice cooking pocket in the middle of our cook chamber. Let's come nice and close. We've got 2 splits on. I'm happy with the color of the smoke behind me. Let's get our St. Louis ribs on the offset. All right, it's go time. Now, since I'm doing actually 2 videos today, I'm only going to be cooking one of these 2 racks on the offset. The other one I'll be doing on the Kamado Joe, but as you can see, I've placed that right in the center. And so when I was measuring, coming out of the firebox to over by the collector, this is about the perfect spot for nice consistent temperatures, but we could fit a lot more in here than just this rack. Let's close this up and let those get cooking. Okay, we're about half an hour from getting ready to wrap our ribs, but it's time to add a couple more splits. So if you haven't seen it, I did an offset 101 with some of my favorite YouTube offset pit masters. And so I had Troy from T-Roy Cooks mention pre-warming your splits. So I want to give you a quick peek or a sneak peek of how well these pre-warmed splits combust the minute that we add them to our coal bed. And Jeremy from Mad Scientist Barbecue is the one who shared really making sure we have the appropriate size splits, and that has been spot on for my 60-gallon size offset smoker. And then the last piece of advice we're going to pull is from Chud's, where we're going to foil boat these once they hit the sort of perfect outside bark, but we want to treat it like a bit of a sweater. That's kind of how the analogy I use for a foil boat is. It allows the top part to still continue to develop bark, but by wrapping it nice and snug around the outside, helps just reduce our total cook time as well as retain some of that tallow, especially for things like brisket where we may want to use that as a finishing element in our cook. Let me show you what the splits look like when we throw some fresh ones on into our coal bed. If you've been journeying with me since last year when I first bought this pit, you'll notice this new shelf. This is something I originally debated on whether I wanted to opt for this upgrade or not, but having done a couple of cooks, I was really missing the shelf space. Some offsets you see come with like a pull-out tray, but being on the concrete patio below, I didn't want that grease getting on the stones, which is what I've noticed has happened with other pull-out systems. So I got this flip-up table, which is really nice and stable, and it's also going to be great for making our foil boat. So these ribs are sitting at about 160 degrees. They still are pretty tight, but to help accelerate things now, we're going to transfer them to the foil boat. We're just going to wrap this up nice and tight all around it. Back on we go. Close it up. Okay, our St. Louis ribs are about half an hour from being done, or at least ready for the sauce where we want to glaze them. So now I like to get my sauce ready to go. It'll help shake off some of that cool from the refrigerator, just bringing it out, getting it, not that it's much better out here, but shake off a little bit of the cool. Plus you can alter it a little bit. So one of the things I like to do is just take a pre-made something like Sweet Baby Ray's and then thin it out with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. You can also do this with bourbon, but it comes out tasting very similar, and this is a lot cheaper than pouring some good bourbon into that ratio. So let me bring you nice and close, show you how I like to make this up, and when I rejoin you next, we'll be ready to glaze our ribs. So making this is incredibly simple. So all you want is just a little jar or a bowl. Anything you can mix together is fine. This is really handy because we can just shake it. And the consistency that we're looking for is thin enough to still coat the back of a spoon, but we want it a lot thinner than what you get in the jar. So let's get this in. That'll be plenty. And then now you're going for about an eighth to no more than a quarter of total volume of apple cider vinegar. Mix that up. Let's check that. Consistency looks good. Taste is good. All right, rejoin you when we're ready to sauce our ribs. All right, we are at about the 4-hour mark, and I think we are getting close. Let's take a look at our ribs. And so that's what I want. I want to see the bend, yet when I go to hold them, that they can hold apart under their own weight without tearing. So I think that's good. Let's flip these, get ready to sauce them. Give our sauce one more shake. Pour some of that over. Brush it on. Give that a couple minutes and we'll flip and do the other side. Okay, let's sauce our presentation side now. Spread that out and let it glaze up. All right, let's get these off, let them rest for about 5 minutes, and then we will slice them up and do our taste test. Can't wait. The aromas coming off of this are amazing. I can't wait to slice into it. Let's flip them over, get a couple sliced out, do our taste test. I don't know if that's coming through, but just an incredible looking smoke ring and just juices galore pouring out the back here. Can't wait. Let's dig into a taste test. Perfect bite through tenderness. Oh my goodness. So what is hitting us? So done perfectly, which I think these are, your tongue shouldn't hit any one thing right away. You shouldn't just notice, oh, that's a lot of smoke, or oh, salt or pepper, or even the kind of the sauce or anything else that we've done to dress these. What you want to do is really have all of those elements coming together in a tsunami of flavor, and that's exactly what's going on here. It makes your brain think. And so first things that I'd kind of notice is just a little bit of the spice from the pepper that sort of spikes and then fades and mellows out, and that mellows into the depth and warmth of the garlic, as well as just that well-rendered fat and the taste of pork coming through, sort of coats over your tongue and provides a really nice sensation. And then we get the sweetness, and that sweetness I think is coming from two areas, just that nice clean smoke, as well as our sauce thinned out with a little bit of that apple cider vinegar. And that's probably the last note that's hitting me, is just a little thin little bit of that acid that kind of cleans your palate and makes you want to do the whole thing all over again. Well, I hope you really enjoyed hanging out with my first official cook on the Smoke North Carlisle offset smoker. If you'd like to see any more cooks on that, I've got a brisket in the freezer I'm dying to cook and a few more things. So let me know what you'd like to see in the comments down below, and I can't wait to cook them and share the results with you. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Smoke Dad Barbecue signing off. And remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.